There is a theater inside your skull. You did not build it. You did not choose the stage. But every morning, when you open your eyes, the curtain rises and the performance begins. You are both the actor and the audience, the director and the critic. And the role you play, the one you have rehearsed since childhood, is not who you are. It is who you need to be to survive the gaze of others. This is not a story about good people or bad people. This is a story about all people. About the machinery that hums beneath our smiles, the calculations that happen faster than thought, the ancient programming that whispers in the silence between heartbeats. You have been told that you are rational, that you make choices based on logic and values. But beneath the surface of your conscious mind, there is something older, something that does not care about your ideals or your identity. It cares only about one thing: status. The brain you carry is not designed for truth. It is designed for survival. And in the social world of human beings, survival has always meant one thing: climbing. Climbing the invisible ladder that exists in every room, every conversation, every glance exchanged between two people who are measuring each other without knowing they are doing it. You feel it when you walk into a party and scan the room. You feel it when someone interrupts you mid-sentence and you swallow your words. You feel it when you post something online and wait, breath held, for the validation to arrive in the form of numbers that mean nothing and everything at once. Before we continue, a warning. The knowledge that is about to be shared cannot be unlearned. It will permanently change the way you see human relationships. If you are ready to abandon comfortable illusions and see what is behind the stage, subscribe now. Because this is not just a video. It is the beginning of your journey under the mask. Now let us begin. Picture a moment. You're sitting across from someone you respect. Maybe it is a mentor, maybe a friend, maybe someone you have just met, but whose approval you suddenly, inexplicably crave. They are speaking, and you are nodding, and somewhere in the machinery of your mind, a calculation is taking place. You are not listening to understand. You are listening to respond. You are listening to find the moment when you can insert yourself into the narrative, when you can demonstrate your intelligence, your wit, your worthiness. And when that moment comes, you take it, you speak, and in that instant, you are not sharing. You are competing. This is not cruelty. This is not malice. This is the status-seeking brain doing what it was built to do. For hundreds of thousands of years, your ancestors lived in small groups where social position meant the difference between eating and starving, between mating and dying alone, between safety and exile. The brain evolved to track status the way it tracks hunger or fear. It became automatic, invisible, woven into the fabric of perception itself. You do not decide to seek status. You simply do. And the mask you wear, the persona you present to the world, is the costume your brain has designed to help you climb. But here is where the story becomes uncomfortable. Because if the brain is a status-seeking machine, then everything you believe about yourself, every noble intention, every act of kindness, every moment of generosity, must be examined under a harsher light. Is your compassion real, or is it a strategy? Is your humility genuine, or is it a performance designed to make others see you as wise? When you help someone, are you responding to their suffering, or are you responding to the opportunity to be seen as helpful? These are not easy questions. They are not meant to be. They are meant to crack open the comfortable story you tell yourself about who you are. Consider the last time you did something kind. Maybe you held a door open for a stranger. Maybe you complimented a colleague. Maybe you donated money to a cause you believed in. Now ask yourself this: would you have done it if no one was watching? Would you have done it if there was no possibility of recognition, no chance that someone would see you and think better of you? And if the answer is no, or even if the answer is maybe, then what does that say about the nature of your kindness? What does it say about the mask you wear? The uncomfortable truth is this: most of what we call virtue is social currency. We perform goodness because goodness is rewarded. We signal our values because values are a form of tribal identification, a way of saying to others, I am like you, I belong here, I am worthy of your respect. And the brain, that ancient calculating machine, has learned to automate this process so thoroughly that we no longer recognize it as calculation. We experience it as feeling. We feel generous when we give. We feel righteous when we defend a cause. We feel connected when we express empathy. And those feelings are real. But they are also tools. Tools the brain uses to navigate the social world, to build alliances, to accumulate the invisible capital that determines our place in the hierarchy. There is a name for this in psychology. It is called signaling. And it happens everywhere, in every interaction, in every choice you make about what to wear, what to say, what to believe. You signal your intelligence by using certain words. You signal your status by associating with certain people. You signal your moral superiority by condemning certain behaviors. And all of this happens so quickly, so automatically, that you do not even realize you are doing it. You think you are being authentic. You think you are expressing your true self. But the true self, if such a thing even exists, is buried beneath layers of performance, beneath the mask that has been shaped by a lifetime of social feedback. Now let us go deeper. Let us examine a specific scenario, a moment that reveals the machinery in action. Imagine you are at work. There is a meeting. Your boss is present, along with several colleagues. Someone presents an idea. It is a good idea, but it has flaws. You see the flaws immediately. And now a choice. Do you point out the flaws? Do you stay silent? Do you praise the idea despite its weaknesses? The answer depends on 1,000 variables that your brain is processing in real time. What is your relationship with the person who presented the idea? What is your relationship with your boss? What will happen to your status if you speak? What will happen if you stay silent? And beneath all of these calculations is a deeper question, one that your conscious mind may never articulate, but that your status-seeking brain is always asking. How can I use this moment to climb? If you point out the flaws, you risk being seen as critical, as difficult, as someone who tears down rather than builds up. But you also position yourself as intelligent, as someone who sees what others miss. If you stay silent, you avoid conflict, but you also become invisible, forgettable, a person who does not contribute. If you praise the idea, you build an alliance with the presenter, but you may lose credibility with those who also see the flaws. Every option has a cost. Every option has a benefit. And your brain, in the span of seconds, is running simulations, predicting outcomes, weighing the social consequences of each possible move. This is not conscious strategy. This is the status-seeking brain doing what it was designed to do. And the mask you wear in that moment, the expression on your face, the tone of your voice, the words you choose, all of it is shaped by this invisible calculation. But here is the twist that makes this story truly unsettling. You are not aware of the calculation. You experience it as intuition, as gut feeling, as simply knowing what to do. And because you are not aware of it, you cannot control it. The mask controls you. The status-seeking brain, with its ancient programming and its relentless focus on hierarchy, is running the show. And you, the conscious you, the you that believes in free will and authentic self-expression, you are just along for the ride, narrating a story that makes sense of actions you did not consciously choose. This is the theater of the self. And the tragedy is that most people never realize they are performing. They believe the mask is their face. They believe the role is their identity. They go through life thinking they are making choices based on values and preferences, never seeing the invisible hand of status-seeking that guides every decision. And the few who do see it, who catch a glimpse of the machinery beneath the surface, they face a choice. Do they look away and return to the comfort of illusion? Or do they keep looking, even though what they see cannot be unseen? Let us look at another scene. A different theater, but the same play. You are scrolling through social media. You see a post from someone you know. They are sharing something personal, something vulnerable. Maybe they are talking about a struggle, a failure, a moment of pain. And you feel something. Compassion, perhaps. Empathy. The urge to reach out, to offer support. So you type a comment. Something kind, something encouraging. You hit send. And then you wait. You wait to see if they respond. You wait to see if others see your comment and think well of you. You wait for the small hit of dopamine that comes when your kindness is acknowledged. And in that waiting, the truth reveals itself. Your compassion was real, but it was also transactional. You gave support, and you expected something in return. Not money, not favors, but something more subtle. Recognition, validation, status. This is not to say that your kindness was fake. It is to say that kindness, like all human behavior, is layered. It can be genuine and strategic at the same time. It can come from a place of real care and also serve the needs of the status-seeking brain. And this duality, this coexistence of authentic feeling and hidden agenda, is what makes human behavior so complex, so difficult to decode. We are not simple creatures. We are not purely selfish or purely altruistic. We are both, always both. And the mask we wear is designed to hide this duality, to present a coherent self to the world, even though the self is anything but coherent. Now let us turn our attention to a more uncomfortable truth. The truth about morality. You have been taught that morality is about right and wrong, about principles and ethics, about doing good because good is inherently valuable. But if we look at morality through the lens of the status-seeking brain, a different picture emerges. Morality, in this view, is not about truth. It is about belonging. It is about signaling to your tribe that you share their values, that you are one of them, that you deserve to be included. And the brain has learned that the fastest way to signal belonging is not to do good, but to condemn bad. To point at someone who has violated the tribe's norms and say, look at them, look at how wrong they are, look at how different I am from them. This is why moral outrage feels so good. It is not just about justice. It is about status. When you express outrage at someone's behavior, you are positioning yourself above them. You are saying, I would never do that, I am better than that, I am more virtuous. And the tribe, if it agrees with you, rewards you with approval, with validation, with a small but significant boost in status. This is the dark engine that drives much of what we call moral behavior. Not a genuine commitment to ethics, but a strategic use of ethics to climb the social ladder. And here is where it gets even darker. Because if morality is a tool for status seeking, then the people who are most vocal about their moral beliefs, the ones who are quickest to judge and condemn, they are not necessarily the most ethical. They are the most strategic. They have learned, consciously or unconsciously, that moral signaling is an effective way to gain status. And so they perform morality, loudly and publicly, not because they care deeply about right and wrong, but because they care deeply about how they are perceived. The mask they wear is the mask of the righteous. And beneath it, the same status-seeking brain that drives everyone else, calculating, competing, climbing. This is not to say that all moral behavior is fake. It is to say that moral behavior, like kindness, is layered. It can be genuine and strategic. It can come from a place of real conviction, and also serve the needs of the status-seeking brain. And the people who are most dangerous, the ones who cause the most harm, are often the ones who believe their own performance, who have convinced themselves that their moral outrage is pure, that their judgments are objective, that their condemnation of others is justified. They do not see the mask they are wearing. They do not see the status-seeking machinery that is driving their behavior. They believe they are fighting for justice, but they are also always fighting for status. Let us examine a real-world example. Think about the last time you saw someone publicly shamed on social media. Maybe they said something offensive. Maybe they made a mistake. Maybe they held a belief that the majority found unacceptable. And then the mob descended. Thousands of people, most of whom had never heard of this person before, suddenly felt compelled to express their disgust, their anger, their moral superiority. They left comments. They shared posts. They participated in the ritual of public condemnation. And if you asked them why, they would say it was about accountability, about making sure bad behavior has consequences, about protecting the vulnerable. And they would believe it. They would believe that their participation in the mob was an act of justice. But beneath the surface, something else was happening. Each person who joined the mob was also signaling to their own tribe. They were saying, look at me, I am on the right side, I am one of you, I deserve your approval. And the brain, that ancient status-seeking machine, was rewarding them for it. Each comment, each share, each expression of outrage triggered a small release of dopamine, a small boost in status, a small confirmation that they were good people, better than the person being shamed. This is the uncomfortable truth about moral outrage. It feels like justice, but it functions like a drug. It gives us a hit of righteousness, a temporary elevation in status, and it costs us nothing except our willingness to participate in cruelty. And the person being shamed, the target of the mob, they become a sacrifice. Not a sacrifice to justice, but a sacrifice to the status needs of the group. By tearing them down, the group elevates itself. By defining them as bad, the group defines itself as good. This is an ancient pattern, older than civilization, older than language. It is the scapegoat mechanism, the ritual of purification through exclusion. And it happens not because people are evil, but because the status-seeking brain has learned that one of the fastest ways to climb is to push someone else down. Now let us shift our focus. Let us talk about relationships. Because if the brain is a status-seeking machine, then every relationship, no matter how intimate, no matter how loving, is also a negotiation of status. This is a hard truth. It is a truth that most people do not want to hear, because we like to believe that love is pure, that friendship is unconditional, that family is a sanctuary from the competitive world outside. But the status-seeking brain does not turn off when you walk through the door of your home. It does not stop calculating, when you are with the people you care about most. It simply changes its strategy. In romantic relationships, status negotiation is constant. Who makes the decisions? Who apologizes first after a fight? Who sacrifices their preferences to accommodate the other? These are not just practical questions. They are status questions, and the brain is tracking them, keeping score, adjusting the mask accordingly. If you find yourself always deferring to your partner, always putting their needs above your own, your brain registers this as low status. And over time, that registration affects how you feel about yourself and about the relationship. Resentment builds, not because your partner is doing anything wrong, but because the status-seeking brain is sending signals that you are losing, that you are being dominated, that you need to fight back or flee. And the same dynamic plays out in friendships. Who talks more? Who gets interrupted? Whose problems are taken seriously, and whose are dismissed? Who is the leader of the group, and who is the follower? These questions are being answered in every interaction, in every conversation, in every shared experience. And the mask you wear with your friends, the role you play in the group, is shaped by these invisible negotiations. You might be the funny one, the one who makes everyone laugh. But why? Is it because humor is your natural mode of expression? Or is it because humor is the strategy your brain has developed to gain status in a group where you cannot compete on other dimensions? You might be the listener, the one who is always there to support others. But why? Is it because you genuinely care, or is it because being needed is a form of status, a way of making yourself indispensable? These are not comfortable questions. They force us to look at our relationships through a lens that strips away the romance, the sentimentality, the comforting stories we tell ourselves about connection and love. But they are necessary questions, because if we do not understand the status dynamics that underlie our relationships, we cannot understand why our relationships so often fail, why they so often leave us feeling unseen, unheard, unvalued. The mask we wear with the people we love is often the heaviest mask of all, because we have the most to lose. If our family rejects us, if our partner leaves us, if our friends abandon us, the status-seeking brain registers this as a catastrophic loss. And so we perform. We hide our true thoughts, our true feelings, our true selves, because revealing them feels too risky. And over time, the performance becomes so habitual that we forget we are performing. We forget there is a self beneath the mask. Let us consider a specific example. A couple has been together for 5 years. They love each other, or at least they believe they do. But lately, something has shifted. They argue more. They feel distant. They go through the motions of intimacy without feeling truly connected. And if you ask them what is wrong, they would struggle to articulate it. They would say things like, "We have grown apart," or "We want different things," or "The spark is gone." But beneath these vague explanations, there is a status dynamic at play. Maybe one partner has advanced in their career, while the other has stagnated. Maybe one has developed new interests and friendships, while the other has stayed the same. Maybe one has started to feel that they are giving more than they are receiving. And the status-seeking brain, always tracking, always calculating, has registered these shifts. It has sent signals that the balance of power has changed, that the relationship is no longer equal, that something needs to be renegotiated. But here is the problem. Most people do not have the language to talk about status. They do not have the tools to recognize what is happening beneath the surface of their emotions. And so they blame each other. They blame circumstances. They blame fate. They do not see that the real issue is not love or compatibility or commitment. The real issue is that the status-seeking brain, in both partners, is no longer satisfied with the arrangement. And until that issue is addressed, until the status dynamics are brought into the light and renegotiated, the relationship will continue to deteriorate, no matter how much the partners care about each other. Now let us talk about power, because status and power are not the same thing, but they are intimately connected. Status is about where you stand in the social hierarchy. Power is about your ability to influence others, to make things happen, to shape the world according to your will. And the status-seeking brain craves power because power is the ultimate form of status. It is not enough to be respected. You want to be obeyed. It is not enough to be liked. You want to be needed. It is not enough to be seen. You want to be feared. This is the dark heart of human ambition. We tell ourselves that we want power to do good, to make a difference, to help others. And sometimes that is true. But more often, we want power because power feels good. It satisfies the status-seeking brain in a way that nothing else can. When you have power, you do not have to perform. You do not have to wear a mask. You can be yourself, or at least a version of yourself that is closer to what you actually feel, because the consequences of being disliked or rejected are diminished. People will tolerate your flaws, your moods, your selfishness, because they need something from you. And the brain, recognizing this, relaxes. The constant vigilance, the constant calculation, the constant performance, all of it eases. This is why people who achieve power often become more authentic, for better or worse. They stop hiding. They stop pretending. The mask comes off, and what is revealed is not always pretty. But power is also dangerous, because the status-seeking brain, once it tastes power, wants more. It is never satisfied. There is always someone higher on the ladder, always another level to reach, always another competitor to defeat. And so the pursuit of power becomes an addiction, a compulsion that consumes everything else. Relationships suffer. Health suffers. Happiness, that elusive state that everyone claims to want, becomes impossible, because happiness requires presence, and the status-seeking brain is always looking ahead, always comparing, always calculating the next move. This is the tragedy of ambition. The very thing that drives us to achieve also prevents us from enjoying what we have achieved. We climb the ladder, rung by rung, believing that the next level will bring satisfaction, only to discover that satisfaction is always one more rung away. And here is another uncomfortable truth. The people who are most successful at gaining power are often the ones who are least constrained by empathy. Not because they are psychopaths, though some are, but because empathy is a brake on status-seeking behavior. When you feel what others feel, when you genuinely care about their suffering, it becomes harder to use them, to manipulate them, to sacrifice them for your own advancement. But the status-seeking brain does not care about empathy. It cares about winning. And so the people who rise to the top in business, in politics, in any competitive domain, are often the ones who have learned to suppress their empathy, or who never had much to begin with. They wear the mask of compassion when it serves them, but beneath the mask, the machinery is cold, calculating, relentless. This is not a moral judgment. It is an observation, a recognition of how the game is played. And if you want to understand power, if you want to understand why the world is the way it is, you have to understand this dynamic. You have to see that the people in charge are not there because they are the most ethical, or the most intelligent, or the most deserving. They are there because they are the most effective at playing the status game. They have mastered the art of the mask. They know when to be charming and when to be ruthless. They know when to cooperate and when to betray. They know how to read the room, how to sense the shifting currents of power, how to position themselves to take advantage of every opportunity. And they do all of this without appearing to do it, because the most effective mask is the one that does not look like a mask at all. Let us now examine the concept of authenticity. Because in recent years, authenticity has become a kind of cultural obsession. Everyone wants to be authentic. Everyone wants to be real. Social media is full of people proclaiming their authenticity, sharing their struggles, revealing their vulnerabilities. And on the surface, this seems like a positive development, a rejection of the mask, a movement toward genuine self-expression. But if we look closer, a different pattern emerges. Because authenticity, in the modern world, has become just another form of performance. Just another strategy for gaining status. When you share your struggles on social media, you are not just being vulnerable. You're also signaling. You are signaling that you are brave enough to be vulnerable, that you are self-aware enough to recognize your flaws, that you are authentic in a world of fakes. And the brain, that ancient status-seeking machine, knows this. It knows that vulnerability, when performed correctly, can be a powerful tool for gaining approval, for building connection, for accumulating social capital. And so what looks like authenticity is often just a more sophisticated mask. A mask that says, I am not wearing a mask. And the irony is that this mask is often more effective than the old masks, the ones that relied on perfection and invulnerability, because it taps into the modern desire for realness, for connection, for something that feels true in a world that feels increasingly fake. But here is the question that cuts to the heart of the matter. Is true authenticity even possible? Can you ever fully remove the mask, or is the mask so deeply integrated into your sense of self that removing it would mean dissolving the self entirely? This is not a rhetorical question. It is a genuine philosophical problem, one that thinkers have grappled with for centuries. Because if the self is constructed through social interaction, if your identity is shaped by the feedback you receive from others, then there is no authentic self beneath the mask. There is only the mask and the awareness of the mask, and the endless negotiation between who you are and who you need to be to survive in the social world. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist who spent his life exploring the depths of the human psyche, had a term for the mask. He called it the persona, and he understood that the persona is not something you can simply discard. It is a necessary adaptation, a way of interfacing with the world. But Jung also warned that if you identify too completely with the persona, if you believe that the mask is your true face, you lose touch with the deeper parts of yourself, the parts that exist beneath the surface of social performance. He called these deeper parts the shadow, and he believed that the path to wholeness, to psychological health, required integrating the shadow, acknowledging the parts of yourself that the persona hides. But here is where Jung's insight becomes uncomfortable. Because the shadow is not just the parts of yourself that are socially unacceptable. It is also the parts that are socially unacceptable to you. The parts that contradict your self-image, your values, your identity. If you see yourself as a kind person, your shadow contains your cruelty. If you see yourself as a moral person, your shadow contains your selfishness. If you see yourself as a rational person, your shadow contains your irrationality. And the status-seeking brain, in its relentless pursuit of social approval, works constantly to keep the shadow hidden, to maintain the coherence of the mask, to prevent you from seeing the contradictions that would undermine your carefully constructed identity. This is why self-awareness is so difficult. It is not just about learning new information about yourself. It is about confronting the parts of yourself that you have spent a lifetime hiding, not just from others, but from yourself. It is about recognizing that the person you believe you are is not the whole truth. It is a story, a narrative, a mask. And beneath the mask, there is something messier, more complex, more contradictory. Something that does not fit neatly into the categories of good and bad, right and wrong, authentic and fake. Something that is simply human. Let us return to the status-seeking brain. Because understanding this mechanism, this ancient programming that drives so much of human behavior, is the first step toward freedom. Not freedom from the mechanism, because you cannot escape your biology, but freedom from the illusion that you are not driven by it. Once you see the machinery, once you recognize the calculations happening beneath the surface of your thoughts and feelings, you gain a kind of distance. You can observe yourself performing, and in that observation, there is a small space of choice. Not the choice to stop performing, because that is impossible, but the choice to perform more consciously, more deliberately, with greater awareness of what you are doing and why. This is what it means to work with the mask rather than against it, to recognize that the persona is not your enemy. It is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used skillfully or clumsily, consciously or unconsciously. When you wear the mask without knowing you are wearing it, you are at its mercy. You react automatically to every social cue, every threat to your status, every opportunity to climb. But when you know you are wearing the mask, when you can see the status-seeking brain at work, you gain the ability to choose your responses. You can decide when to compete and when to cooperate. You can decide when to signal and when to be silent. You can decide when to perform and when to simply be. But this kind of awareness comes at a cost. Because once you see the machinery, you cannot unsee it. You start to notice it everywhere. In yourself, in others, in every interaction, every conversation, every social ritual. You see the status negotiations happening in real time. You see people jockeying for position, signaling their value, performing their identities. And it can be exhausting. It can make you cynical. It can make you wonder if anything is real, if anyone is genuine, if connection is even possible in a world where everyone is wearing a mask. This is the danger of the knowledge we are exploring. It can lead to a kind of paralysis, a sense that if everything is performance, then nothing matters. But this is a misunderstanding, because the fact that behavior is driven by status seeking does not mean that behavior is meaningless. It does not mean that kindness is worthless, or that love is fake, or that morality is a lie. It means that these things are complex. It means that they exist on multiple levels simultaneously. Your kindness can be genuine and strategic. Your love can be real and transactional. Your morality can be sincere and self-serving. And recognizing this complexity, rather than collapsing it into simple categories of true and false, is what allows you to navigate the social world with wisdom rather than naivety. Let us consider another scenario. You're at a dinner party. The conversation turns to politics. Someone expresses an opinion that you find deeply offensive. And now a choice. Do you challenge them? Do you stay silent? Do you change the subject? The status-seeking brain is already calculating. If you challenge them, you risk conflict, but you also signal your values to the others at the table. If you stay silent, you avoid conflict, but you may feel complicit, and others may wonder where you stand. If you change the subject, you maintain harmony, but you may be seen as evasive or cowardly. Every option has social consequences. Every option affects your status in different ways. And here is the key insight. There is no right answer. There is no objectively correct choice that will satisfy both your values and your status needs. You have to decide, in the moment, what matters more to you. And that decision reveals something about who you are, or at least who you are trying to be. If you challenge the person, you are prioritizing your values over social harmony. If you stay silent, you are prioritizing harmony over self-expression. If you change the subject, you are prioritizing comfort over engagement. None of these choices is inherently better or worse. They are simply different strategies for navigating a complex social situation. And the mask you wear, the persona you present, will shift depending on which strategy you choose. But here is what most people do not realize. The choice itself is shaped by your history, by the feedback you have received over a lifetime of social interactions. If you have learned that challenging others leads to rejection, your brain will steer you towards silence or evasion. If you have learned that expressing your values leads to approval, your brain will steer you toward confrontation. The choice feels like it is yours, but it is also the product of countless calculations that your status-seeking brain has made over the years, calculations that have shaped your personality, your habits, your automatic responses to social situations. You are not as free as you think you are, but you are also not as determined as you fear. There is a space between stimulus and response, a space where awareness can operate, where you can observe the machinery at work and choose to act differently than your conditioning would dictate. This space is where freedom lives. Not the freedom to escape your biology, but the freedom to work with it consciously, to recognize that you are a status-seeking creature, and to decide, moment by moment, how you want to play the game. Do you want to play it ruthlessly, maximizing your status at every opportunity, even if it means sacrificing your relationships and your integrity? Or do you want to play it wisely, recognizing that status is important, but not everything, that there are other values worth pursuing, other ways of measuring a life well lived? These are not easy questions. They require you to confront the tension between your biological drives and your conscious values. But they are the questions that define what it means to be human. To be caught between the animal and the angel, between the machinery of the brain and the aspirations of the mind. Now let us talk about suffering. Because if the status-seeking brain is always comparing, always measuring, always calculating your position relative to others, then suffering is inevitable. You will always find someone who has more than you, who is more successful, more attractive, more loved. And the brain, in its relentless tracking of status, will register this as a loss, as a threat, as evidence that you are falling behind. This is the source of much of modern anxiety. Not material deprivation, because most people in the developed world have their basic needs met, but status deprivation. The sense that you are not enough, that you are not keeping up, that you are losing the game that everyone else seems to be winning. Social media has amplified this dynamic to an almost unbearable degree. Because now, you are not just comparing yourself to the people in your immediate environment. You are comparing yourself to everyone, everywhere, all the time. You see the highlight reels of thousands of lives, and your brain, which did not evolve to handle this kind of information overload, treats each one as a status threat. You see someone on vacation, and your brain registers that they have more leisure than you. You see someone celebrating an achievement, and your brain registers that they are more successful than you. You see someone in a happy relationship, and your brain registers that they are more loved than you. And each of these comparisons, each of these tiny status calculations, chips away at your sense of well-being, leaving you feeling inadequate, anxious, depressed. But here is the paradox. The people you are comparing yourself to are doing the same thing. They are looking at your life, or at someone else's life, and feeling the same inadequacy, the same anxiety, the same sense that they are not enough. Everyone is performing, everyone is signaling, everyone is trying to convince themselves and others that they are winning the status game. But no one is winning, because the game has no end. There is no final level, no ultimate achievement that will satisfy the status-seeking brain. It will always want more. It will always find a new comparison, a new threat, a new reason to feel that you are falling short. This is the trap of the status-seeking brain. It promises satisfaction, but delivers only craving. It promises security, but delivers only anxiety. It promises meaning, but delivers only emptiness. Because status, in the end, is not real. It is a social construct, a shared hallucination, a game that we all agree to play, but that has no objective existence outside of our collective belief in it. And yet, we cannot stop playing, because the brain, with its ancient programming, treats status as if it were a matter of life and death. And in the ancestral environment, it was. But in the modern world, where survival is largely guaranteed, the status-seeking brain has become a source of suffering rather than a tool for survival. So what is the solution? How do you live in a world where status matters, where the brain is constantly calculating, where the mask is always in place? The answer is not to reject status entirely, because that is impossible. The answer is to change your relationship with it, to recognize that status is a game, and that you can choose how seriously to take it. You can play the game without being consumed by it. You can pursue achievement without tying your self-worth to the outcome. You can seek approval without needing it to feel whole. This is the path of what the Buddhists call non-attachment. Not detachment, which implies indifference, but non-attachment, which implies engagement without clinging, participation without identification. Non-attachment means recognizing that your status, your achievements, your reputation, all of it is temporary, contingent, ultimately unimportant in the grand scheme of things. But it also means recognizing that this does not make life meaningless. It makes it free. Because when you stop clinging to status, when you stop needing to be seen a certain way, when you stop performing for the approval of others, you create space for something deeper, for genuine connection, for authentic expression, for the kind of presence that is only possible when you are not constantly calculating your next move. But this kind of freedom is rare, because it requires you to go against your programming, to resist the pull of the status-seeking brain, to sit with the discomfort of not knowing where you stand, of not being sure how you are perceived. It requires you to tolerate the anxiety that comes when you stop performing, when you let the mask slip, when you allow yourself to be seen as you actually are, flaws and all. And most people cannot tolerate this anxiety. They would rather keep performing, keep climbing, keep chasing the next level of status, even if it makes them miserable, because at least it gives them something to do, a clear goal, a sense of purpose. This is the tragedy of the human condition. We are driven by a brain that was designed for a world that no longer exists. A world where status meant survival, where the tribe was everything, where being cast out meant death. But we live in a different world now. A world where you can survive without the tribe, where you can build a life on your own terms, where status is optional. But the brain has not caught up. It still treats social rejection as a mortal threat. It still drives you to compete, to perform, to climb. And until you understand this, until you see the machinery at work, you will be at its mercy, a puppet dancing to the tune of ancient programming that no longer serves you. Let us now explore the concept of manipulation. Because if everyone is wearing a mask, if everyone is playing the status game, then every interaction is, to some degree, a manipulation. This is not a comfortable thought. We like to believe that manipulation is something that bad people do, that it is a deliberate, malicious act. But manipulation, in its broadest sense, is simply the attempt to influence others to get what you want. And everyone does it, all the time, often without realizing it. When you smile at someone to make them like you, that is manipulation. When you compliment someone to gain their favor, that is manipulation. When you share a vulnerability to create connection, that is manipulation. It is not necessarily bad. It is simply human. But there is a spectrum. On one end, there is benign manipulation, the kind that oils the wheels of social interaction, that makes life smoother and more pleasant for everyone involved. On the other end, there is malicious manipulation, the kind that exploits others for personal gain, that causes harm, that treats people as objects to be used rather than subjects to be respected. And most manipulation falls somewhere in between, in a gray area where intentions are mixed, where you are trying to get what you want but also, hopefully, considering the needs and feelings of others. The people who are most skilled at manipulation are the ones who understand the status-seeking brain. They know what people want, what people fear, what people need to believe about themselves. And they use this knowledge to influence behavior. They know that people want to feel important, so they flatter. They know that people want to feel understood, so they mirror. They know that people want to feel part of something larger than themselves, so they offer belonging. And all of this is manipulation, but it is manipulation that works because it taps into real human needs, real human desires, real human vulnerabilities. The question is not whether you manipulate others. You do. The question is whether you do it consciously or unconsciously, skillfully or clumsily, ethically or unethically. And the answer to that question depends on your level of self-awareness, your understanding of the machinery, your willingness to examine your own motives and tactics. Because the mask you wear is not just a defense. It is also a weapon. It is a tool for influencing others, for shaping their perceptions, for getting what you want. And the more skilled you become at wearing the mask, the more power you have, but also the more responsibility you bear for how you use that power. Let us consider a specific example of manipulation in action. Imagine a manager who wants their team to work harder. They could simply demand it, use their authority to compel compliance. But that would create resentment, resistance, a loss of morale. So instead, they use a more subtle approach. They praise the team for their dedication. They express confidence in their abilities. They frame the extra work as an opportunity, a challenge, a chance to prove themselves. And the team, responding to the praise, the confidence, the framing, works harder. Not because they were forced to, but because they were manipulated into wanting to. This is not necessarily unethical. The manager may genuinely believe that the extra work is necessary, that it will benefit the team in the long run. But it is still manipulation. It is still the use of psychological tactics to influence behavior. And here is the uncomfortable part. This kind of manipulation is everywhere. In advertising, in politics, in relationships, in every domain where one person is trying to influence another. And the people who are best at it are often the ones who do not see it as manipulation. They see it as leadership, as persuasion, as simply being effective. They have internalized the tactics so completely that they no longer recognize them as tactics. The mask has become the face. The performance has become the identity. And this is when manipulation becomes most dangerous. Because when you do not see what you are doing, you cannot question it, you cannot examine it, you cannot choose to do it differently. Now let us talk about guilt. Because if you have been paying attention, if you have been recognizing yourself in these descriptions, you may be feeling a certain discomfort. A sense that you are not who you thought you were, that your motives are not as pure as you believed, that the mask you wear is more elaborate and more deceptive than you realized. This discomfort is guilt. And guilt, like all emotions, serves a function. It is the brain's way of signaling that you have violated a norm, that you have done something that could threaten your status, that you need to make amends or change your behavior. But here is the paradox of guilt. It is both useful and destructive. Useful because it can motivate you to be better, to act more ethically, to consider the impact of your behavior on others. Destructive because it can trap you in a cycle of self-recrimination, of shame, of feeling that you are fundamentally flawed or bad. And the status-seeking brain, always calculating, can use guilt as a weapon against you. It can convince you that you are worse than others, that you are uniquely selfish or manipulative, that you deserve to be punished. And this conviction, this internalized judgment, can become a new kind of mask. The mask of the guilty person, the one who is always apologizing, always trying to make up for their perceived sins, always seeking redemption. But the truth is, you are not uniquely flawed. You are human. And being human means being driven by a status-seeking brain, means wearing a mask, means manipulating and being manipulated, means living in the tension between your biological drives and your conscious values. Everyone is doing this. Everyone is struggling with this. The difference is that most people do not see it. They do not recognize the machinery. They believe their own performance. And so they judge themselves and others based on the mask, based on the surface, based on the story, never seeing the complexity beneath. The path forward is not to eliminate guilt, but to transform it. To move from guilt as self-punishment to guilt as self-awareness. To recognize that when you feel guilty, it is because you have seen something true about yourself, something that contradicts your self-image, something that the mask was designed to hide. And instead of punishing yourself for this recognition, you can use it as an opportunity to grow, to become more conscious, to choose your behavior more deliberately. This is what Jung meant by integrating the shadow. Not rejecting the parts of yourself that you find unacceptable, but acknowledging them, understanding them, and deciding how to work with them rather than against them. Let us now turn to a different question. If the status-seeking brain is so powerful, if it drives so much of human behavior, then what role does consciousness play? What is the point of awareness if you are ultimately at the mercy of ancient programming? This is a question that philosophers and neuroscientists have debated for centuries, and there is no simple answer. But here is one way to think about it. Consciousness is not in control. It is not the driver of the car. but it is the observer. It is the part of you that can watch the machinery at work, that can notice the status calculations happening in real time, that can recognize the mask for what it is. And this observation, this awareness, creates a small but significant space for choice. You cannot choose not to have a status-seeking brain. You cannot choose not to wear a mask. But you can choose how you respond to the impulses, the calculations, the automatic reactions that the brain generates. You can choose to pause before you speak, to consider your motives before you act, to question the story you are telling yourself about who you are and what you want. And in that pause, in that consideration, in that questioning, there is freedom. Not absolute freedom, but relative freedom. The freedom to act with intention rather than pure instinct, to align your behavior with your values rather than just your drives, to become, in some small way, the author of your own life rather than just a character in a script written by evolution. This is the promise of self-awareness. Not that it will make you perfect or even good, but that it will make you more conscious, more deliberate, more able to navigate the complexity of human existence with wisdom rather than just instinct. And this is no small thing, because the world is full of people who are acting on instinct, who are driven by their status-seeking brains without any awareness of what is driving them. And these people, however well-intentioned, cause harm. They hurt others in their pursuit of status. They sacrifice relationships for advancement. They perform morality while acting immorally. They wear masks so convincing that they fool themselves. And the harm they cause is not malicious. It is simply unconscious. They do not see what they are doing. They do not recognize the machinery. But you, if you have made it this far, if you have stayed with this uncomfortable exploration, you are beginning to see. You are beginning to recognize the machinery, the mask, the status-seeking brain that drives so much of what you do. And this recognition, however uncomfortable, is the first step towards something better. Not perfection, but consciousness. Not freedom from the machinery, but freedom within it. The freedom to choose, moment by moment, how you want to play the game, what kind of person you want to be, what kind of life you want to live. Let us explore one more dimension of this story, the dimension of meaning. Because if status is a game, if the mask is a performance, if the self is a construction, then what is the point? Why bother with any of it? Why not just give up, retreat from the social world, stop playing the game entirely? This is the question that arises when you see through the illusions, when you recognize the machinery, when you understand that so much of what you thought was real is actually just a shared hallucination. And it is a dangerous question, because it can lead to nihilism, to the belief that nothing matters, that life is meaningless, that there is no point in trying. But nihilism is a trap. It is the flip side of the illusion, the belief that if something is not objectively real, it is not real at all. But this is a false dichotomy, because meaning does not have to be objective to be real. It does not have to be eternal to be valuable. It does not have to be universal to be worth pursuing. Meaning is something you create, something you choose, something you build through your actions and your relationships and your commitments. And the fact that it is constructed, that it is contingent, that it could be otherwise does not make it any less meaningful. It makes it more precious, because it is yours. It is the result of your choices, your values, your engagement with the world. This is the existentialist insight, that you are thrown into a world without inherent meaning, without a predetermined purpose, without a script to follow. And this is terrifying, but it is also liberating, because it means you are free to create your own meaning, to define your own purpose, to write your own script. You are not bound by the expectations of others, by the norms of society, by the programming of your brain. You can choose. And that choice, that act of creation, is what makes life worth living. But here is the challenge. Creating meaning requires courage. It requires you to act in the face of uncertainty, to commit to something even though you know it is contingent, to care about something even though you know it could be taken away. And the status-seeking brain, with its focus on safety and survival, resists this kind of courage. It wants guarantees. It wants certainty. It wants to know that the effort will be rewarded, that the risk will pay off, that the status will be secured. But life does not offer guarantees. It offers only possibilities. And to live fully, to create meaning, to become who you are capable of becoming, you have to embrace the uncertainty, to act without knowing the outcome, to commit without needing assurance. This is what it means to live authentically. Not to remove the mask, because that is impossible, but to wear it consciously, to recognize it as a tool rather than an identity, to use it in service of something larger than status. To use it in service of connection, of creation, of contribution. to recognize that the game of status is just one game among many, and that there are other games worth playing, games that do not have winners and losers, games that are not about climbing but about deepening, not about competing but about collaborating, not about being seen but about seeing. And here is the final uncomfortable truth. You will fail at this. You will forget. You will get caught up in the status game. You will wear the mask without realizing it. You will manipulate and be manipulated. You will hurt others and be hurt. You will fall back into unconsciousness, into automatic behavior, into the patterns that the brain has been running for a lifetime. This is inevitable, because you are human. And being human means being imperfect, being inconsistent, being caught between the machinery and the awareness, between the animal and the angel. But each time you fail, each time you recognize that you have been unconscious, each time you see the mask for what it is, you have an opportunity. An opportunity to choose again, to act differently, to move a little closer to the person you want to be. And over time, with practice, with patience, with compassion for yourself and others, the space between stimulus and response grows. The awareness becomes more stable. The choices become more deliberate. And the life you live becomes more aligned with the values you hold, more expressive of the meaning you have created, more true to the self that exists beneath the mask. This is not a story with a happy ending. It is not a story with an ending at all, because the theater inside your skull never closes. The curtain never falls for the last time. The performance continues day after day, interaction after interaction, choice after choice. And the question is not whether you will play the game. You will. The question is whether you will play it consciously or unconsciously, skillfully or clumsily, with awareness or with blindness. The question is whether you will be the puppet or the puppeteer, the actor who believes the role or the actor who knows it is a role. And the answer to that question is not fixed. It changes moment by moment, depending on your level of awareness, your degree of presence, your willingness to see what is actually happening beneath the surface of your thoughts and feelings. Sometimes you will be conscious. Sometimes you will be unconscious. Sometimes you will see the machinery. Sometimes you will be the machinery. And that is okay. That is human. The goal is not perfection. The goal is simply to increase the ratio of conscious moments to unconscious moments, to spend more time in awareness and less time in automatic reaction, to live more deliberately and less mechanically. This is the work of a lifetime. It is not easy. It is not comfortable. It requires you to confront truths about yourself that you would rather not see, to acknowledge drives and motives that contradict your self-image, to sit with the discomfort of not knowing who you really are beneath the mask. But it is also the most important work you can do. Because everything else in your life, every relationship, every achievement, every moment of joy or suffering, is filtered through the lens of your self-awareness. If you do not understand the machinery, if you do not see the mask, if you do not recognize the status-seeking brain at work, then you are living someone else's life. You are following a script written by evolution, by society, by the accumulated feedback of 1,000 social interactions. But if you do the work, if you develop the awareness, if you learn to see what is actually happening, then you gain the ability to write your own script, to choose your own path, to become the author of your own existence. And this is where the story becomes hopeful. Because despite everything we have explored, despite the uncomfortable truths about status-seeking and manipulation and the mask, there is also beauty in the human condition. There is beauty in the struggle, in the effort to become conscious, in the moments when you see through the illusion and choose to act with integrity anyway. There is beauty in connection, in the rare moments when two people drop their masks and see each other as they actually are. There is beauty in creation, in the act of making something meaningful in a world that offers no inherent meaning. There is beauty in courage, in the willingness to act in the face of uncertainty, to commit to something even though you know it is contingent, to care about something even though you know it could be taken away. This beauty is not diminished by the fact that it is constructed, that it is temporary, that it exists only because we choose to create it. If anything, it is enhanced, because it is fragile, because it requires effort, because it is the result of consciousness acting against the grain of unconscious programming, of awareness choosing something other than what the machinery would dictate. And in those moments, in those choices, there is something transcendent. Not transcendent in the sense of escaping the human condition, but transcendent in the sense of rising above it, of becoming more than just a puppet of evolution, of expressing something that is uniquely human. The capacity for self-awareness, the capacity for choice, the capacity for meaning-making in a meaningless universe. So where does this leave us? What are we to do with this knowledge, this uncomfortable awareness of the status-seeking brain and the mask we wear? The answer is simple, though not easy. We continue. We continue to live, to relate, to work, to play the game. But we do it with eyes open. We do it with awareness. We recognize the machinery, but we do not let it control us completely. We wear the mask, but we do not forget that it is a mask. We seek status, but we do not make it the only thing we seek. We manipulate and are manipulated, but we do it consciously, ethically, with consideration for the humanity of others. We practice. We practice seeing the status calculations as they happen. We practice pausing before we react. We practice questioning our motives, examining our assumptions, challenging the stories we tell ourselves. We practice compassion for ourselves and for others, recognizing that everyone is struggling with the same machinery. Everyone is wearing a mask. Everyone is trying to navigate the impossible complexity of being human in a social world. And in this practice, in this ongoing effort to become more conscious, we find something that the status-seeking brain can never provide. Not satisfaction, because the practice never ends. Not certainty, because the self is always shifting. But something more valuable. Integrity. The sense that you are living in alignment with your values, that you are acting with awareness rather than pure instinct, that you are becoming, slowly and imperfectly, the person you choose to be rather than just the person your programming would make you. And perhaps most importantly, we connect. We find others who are doing the same work, who are asking the same questions, who are willing to look beneath the mask and see the machinery at work. We create spaces where it is safe to be honest, where the performance can be set aside, where the status game can be acknowledged and then, at least temporarily, suspended. These spaces are rare. They require trust, vulnerability, courage. But they are also the most valuable spaces in human life. Because in them, something real can happen. Not the performance of connection, but actual connection. Not the signaling of values, but the living of values. Not the mask, but the face beneath the mask, however imperfect, however contradictory, however human. This is the promise of the journey under the mask. Not that you will escape the machinery, but that you will understand it. Not that you will stop playing the game, but that you will play it more consciously. Not that you will become perfect, but that you will become more aware, more deliberate, more able to choose who you are and how you show up in the world. And in that awareness, in that choice, there is a kind of freedom. Not absolute freedom, but the freedom that comes from seeing clearly, from acting with intention, from living with integrity. The theater inside your skull will continue. The curtain will rise every morning. The performance will go on. But now, you know it is a performance. You know there is a mask. You know there is machinery beneath the surface. And that knowledge, however uncomfortable, is also power. The power to choose. The power to change. The power to become something more than just a puppet of evolution, more than just a player in a game you did not choose. The power to be human, fully and consciously, with all the complexity and contradiction and beauty that entails. Let us consider one final scenario, one final moment that brings all of these threads together. You are alone. It is late at night. The world is quiet. And in that quiet, you have a moment of clarity. You see yourself as you actually are. Not the mask you wear for others. Not the story you tell yourself. But the actual you with all your contradictions, all your drives, all your fears and desires and calculations. You see the status-seeking brain at work. You see the ways you manipulate and are manipulated. You see the performance, the persona, the endless negotiation between who you are and who you need to be. And in that moment, you have a choice. You can look away. You can return to the comfort of illusion, to the belief that the mask is your face, that the performance is your identity. You can go back to sleep, back to unconsciousness, back to the automatic patterns that have been running your life. And there is no judgment in this choice. It is the choice that most people make most of the time. Because consciousness is hard. It is uncomfortable. It requires you to see things you would rather not see, to acknowledge truths you would rather deny, to live with uncertainty and complexity, and the constant awareness that you are not who you thought you were. Or you can keep looking. You can stay with the discomfort. You can continue to observe the machinery, to question the mask, to examine the status-seeking brain and all the ways it shapes your behavior. You can commit to the practice of awareness, knowing that you will fail, knowing that you will forget, knowing that the work never ends. But also knowing that this is the only path to something real, something true, something that is actually yours rather than just a product of programming and social conditioning. This is the choice that defines a human life. Not the choice between good and evil, because those categories are too simple, too binary, too disconnected from the actual complexity of human motivation. But the choice between consciousness and unconsciousness, between awareness and automaticity, between living deliberately and living mechanically. And this choice is not made once. It is made over and over, moment by moment, day by day, in every interaction, every decision, every thought that crosses your mind. And here is the secret that makes all of this bearable, that makes the discomfort worth it, that makes the journey under the mask something other than just an exercise in cynicism and despair. The secret is that consciousness, once awakened, cannot be fully extinguished. Once you see the machinery, you cannot completely unsee it. Once you recognize the mask, you cannot completely forget that it is a mask. The awareness may fade. It may recede into the background. You may go for days or weeks or months operating on autopilot, driven by the status-seeking brain, performing your role without question. But then something happens. A moment of clarity, a flash of recognition, a sudden awareness that you are performing, that you are wearing a mask, that there is machinery at work beneath the surface. And in that moment, you remember. You remember that you have a choice. You remember that you can be conscious. You remember that there is a path, however difficult, towards something more real, more true, more aligned with who you actually are. And each time you remember, the awareness becomes a little stronger. The space between stimulus and response becomes a little wider. The ability to choose becomes a little more developed. And over time, over a lifetime of practice, of forgetting and remembering, of falling asleep and waking up, something shifts. Not a dramatic transformation. Not an escape from the human condition, but a gradual evolution toward greater consciousness, greater integrity, greater alignment between your actions and your values. And this evolution, this slow and imperfect movement toward awareness, is what it means to grow as a human being. Not to become perfect, but to become more conscious. Not to escape the machinery, but to work with it more skillfully. Not to remove the mask, but to wear it with awareness, with intention, with the knowledge that it is a tool rather than an identity. This is the journey. This is the work. This is what it means to live under the mask, to see the status-seeking brain at work, to recognize the theater inside your skull and choose, moment by moment, how you want to play your role. It is not easy. It is not comfortable. It will challenge everything you believe about yourself, about others, about the nature of human relationships and human society. But it is also the most important journey you can take. Because it is the journey toward yourself. Not the self you perform for others, not the self you wish you were, but the actual self, the one that exists beneath the mask, the one that is capable of consciousness, of choice, of creating meaning in a world that offers none. And so the curtain falls on this act. But the show continues inside each of us, in the silence of our thoughts. The mask we have analyzed today, you may know it well. You may wear it, or perhaps you see it in someone you love. The comment section below is not a place for judgment. It is our stage for confessions, a safe space for observers. Use that space to share your story. What mask did you have to wear to survive? We want to hear from you. And if you felt understood here, subscribe. Because here, you are not alone. Together, we will keep unraveling human theater, one mask at a time. The next act is about to begin.